Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Sally here, and this is Headspace for the Workplace. It's a podcast on how to cultivate vibrant and psychologically safe and healthy workplaces. And our goal is to help you up your game. And today we're going to talk about leading the way, about how supporting veterans' mental health while also harnessing their leadership can improve your workplace mental health and resiliency. And I'm here today with Dr. Joe Geraci, and he is going to tell us what our two teaser takeaways are. What are the two things people are going to learn today, Joe?
Number one, become an expert marksman. And number two, set your mark high.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly how this is all going to tie into workplace mental health, but we're going to find out. Here we go. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do every day? What's your job?
Yeah, so after serving 20 years as an infantry officer for deployments to Afghanistan, I came to the dark side, now serve as a psychologist within the VA and a director within the VA, trying to help to save as many lives as we potentially can.
Yes, excellent. And for all of you out there, we met through a consortium called Face the Fight, where we're trying to reduce veteran suicide by 50% over the next 5 years. It's a daunting goal, but it's exciting to be a part of it. So thank you for saying yes and coming on to this program. Tell us a little bit something curious about yourself. What's something that most people don't anticipate when they learn it about you?
Something that people don't usually know is that I like to grow tea roses, and I like to kind of mature them and so they're perfect, ready to present on the dining room table. And it's a good insight into my soul and my well-being and my balance. If the roses aren't well managed and manicured, if black spots on there, they're starting to wilt, that means I need to rebalance myself. I'm out of balance.
Wow. Well, I think gardening in general is a beautiful metaphor for life. So that's wonderful. And you also add a lovely well-being symbol into your home when you do that everybody can enjoy. Well, tell us really about what the passion is. What drives your passion? Why do you care about veterans' mental health so much?
Yeah, the biggest problem is that I have seen the bravery, the heroics of my fellow brothers and sisters on the battlefield. And it's really concerning to me that now we've got tenfold that died within Iraq and Afghanistan are now dying by suicide as they transition to civilian life. So that's what drives me every day.
And you've had your own experiences with this as well. Can you tell our listeners about your own journey with your own mental health?
Sure. Yeah. After one of my 4 deployments in 2006, one of my best friends, Tommy Bostic, was killed in an ambush, and it really kind of put me on a pretty bad downward spiral and kind of brought me to a place where I was probably drinking a little more than I wanted to. I could see the impact upon my kids, and I just realized it was time for me to lead by example, because I was a senior Army officer at the time, and I didn't have many mentors around me that sought care. So it was important for me to go and seek care of myself at a VA vet center and kind of stand there and dance with the black dog, if you will, from the Winston Churchill analogy, and learn that two-step.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. And for those of you who haven't heard of Joe's work before, he's doing incredible research that is practical, that we can use to change the outcomes that we're seeing. And when I learned of his work, I knew that I had to bring him over to the workplace side of things, because some of the things he's talking about that we'll talk about today is around improving leadership and around improving community engagement. So here we go. Let's unpack that first tip. What did you mean by become an expert marksman?
Yeah, I think that goes well with, it's a two-part. So become an expert marksman, and the other part of it is also leadership by walking around. So the first part, become an expert marksman. So I learned as a very, very junior officer coming out of West Point is that the only way that I would earn the respect of my soldiers, who are most of them older than me, is to become a master of my trade. And as an infantry officer, the most important kind of thing that we do is to be able to use our weapon, our assault rifle. And I didn't grow up, becoming, rifle. I just didn't grow up with guns as much. So it was really challenging for me, but something I knew I needed to work really, really, really hard at. And I couldn't shy away from it. I needed to, opposed to shying away from it, I needed to go grab 5,000 rounds and just kind of go to the range by myself and just constantly go on, so I could become an expert at it myself. And what that really allowed me to do is then really earn the respect of my soldiers. And and to the point where they could kind of come to me with things. And that's where the leadership by walking around. So it's one thing to walk around as a leader and not be respected. It's a whole other thing to be able to walk around and be a respected leader. So that one little simple task, being an expert at the trade that my service members valued and was so key and core to their profession, that I needed to be the expert better than anyone else at it. At their level, at their grassroots, where the way that they saw the world was how you scored with your rifle. And as Abraham Lincoln, kind of really kind of embodied and exemplified leadership by walking around during the Civil War, you'll see lots of pictures of him on the front lines with his generals, with the soldiers, really kind of getting into their boots and seeing things from their perspective. And that goes a long way. So number one, earning their respect. Number two, knowing that you care about them and you love them. And one of the best ways to do that is by walk around. One of the examples that we would do is we would send out patrol out every single day in Afghanistan. And even though I was the senior army leader, I would just kind of jump in the back of the truck and just to kind of go along for the ride. Like I wasn't in charge, but just to ride along with my soldiers and just to kind of hear their stories on the multi-hour kind of trip and just kind of being able to really understand what they were going through and their challenges. And, with that aspect of being an expert with leadership and walking around, it's really powerful what you can see what it comes to. And the most important thing is trust, is they really can kind of trust you. And that's really, really powerful when it comes to the bottom line, to have people that work for you that trust you.
So, Joe, if they're going to become a more expert marksman, they do have to have some deeper understanding of what the veterans' experiences are coming into the workforce. Well, how do you describe that? How would you suggest they go about doing that?
Yeah, I just keep it very simple and just shut up and listen and just be inquisitive and just ask them and be curious about the opportunities. And they'll be more than happy to let them know what their experiences were. It does take some ability for you to maybe do some kind of background research yourself, like, hey, how many branches are there in the military? But other than that, like veterans love to tell their stories and just be open and honest and curious
Great.
and
All right.
inquisitive.
Exactly. Like what better way to understand it than that firsthand knowledge? All right, let's move on to the tip two. What did you mean by set your marks high when it comes to workplace leaders trying to do a better job and creating their mental health programs, especially as it's serving their veterans workforce?
Yeah, so I would say setting your mark high means like really kind of allowing veterans to grow into their full potential. So set your mark high for them. So one organization that I had a little bit of a work experience with is they had this massive hiring initiative to hire as many veterans as they could, but majority of them came in as very entry level, as baristas. And as you would imagine, very few of them gravitated to higher positions. And, kind of at the end of the day, a lot of those veterans left that position. So at the end, I would say it failed, opposed to really allowing yourself to look at the skill sets, look at the experience that the veterans have that they can bring in and improve the organization. Not just kind of like a token, hey, we hired a couple of veterans, but really allowing yourselves to improve the organization. So you're talking about individuals that know how to deal with extreme stress. They know how to accomplish high expectations and tasks, very specific goals. They go above and beyond all the time. It's kind of it's put in our DNA as military leaders and as service members. So really allow that to come to fruition. Like that rose, it really needs to be kind of have nutrients. It needs to be water, and then it can really kind of grow into its full potential. So don't set your mark high. Set your mark high. Don't set your mark low. Set your mark high on what they can really accomplish, and they'll grow to meet that elevation and expectation.
That's right. I remember we were doing some work for men's mental health campaign called Man Therapy, and we were trying to create a military and veterans campaign for it. So I got to interview a number of people who had been active duty in war zones and they had transitioned back. And I said, tell me, why do you think the veterans numbers are so high? And they said, well, partly the trauma, it sucked and we're still dealing with it. But honestly, the part that's worse is that the transition back was nothing like we expected. And one of the big pieces of that was that the expectations for them had fallen. Like the expectations for us while we were serving were high and the mission was important. And we excelled because of that expectation for us. When we came back, people were like, yeah. And we failed because we couldn't find a pathway forward. Like no one was expecting this high level of excellence from us. And so I think that's such an important part. And the other part that I think is great too is the sense of camaraderie. We talk about the delicate transition time in the first, upwards of a year coming out of active duty military into civilian life. And they're missing that sense of community, that sense of team, that sense of belongingness that workplaces can provide. And so both of those things together can do great work. But the other piece that I want to have you speak about is how they can not only have leadership roles in an organization that will probably exceed people's expectations because of all the training and experience they've had, but that they can also specifically lead in the areas of developing a mental health program. Can you describe that as well?
Sure. And, it's important to know is as we go through our different promotions and go from one position to other, we usually have about a year to be able to kind of spend and learn that next level. And so we really have a time to kind of develop ourselves. And one of those important things that we learn is how to manage stress and how to develop certain skills and trainings to kind of help to manage our organizations through this. So, for example, within the Army of the Master Resilience Training Course, where a lot of the service members will go and learn how to become master trainers in resilience and how do you optimize resilience within your organization. Or a lot of them have become, military sexual trauma, kind of trainers, or suicide prevention trainers, or equal opportunity trainers. So really a skill set that can really be kind of leveraged within the civilian sector.
Yeah. And I've seen them lead employee resource groups. I've seen them lead mental health champion groups that are driving forward these initiatives in their companies. And because of that excellent leadership skill and team working skill they have, they're really ideal candidates to lead the way for a lot of different workplace groups. So I'm going to go back and do a quick recap, and then I'm going to come back to you for final thoughts. So again, I'm here with Joe Geraci, and we're talking about workplaces helping support veterans in many ways, but also empowering them to lead their mental health initiatives and other leadership excellence opportunities within the workplace. And we're talking about the importance of becoming an expert marksman, which really means really getting to know this population and hear their stories, understand where they're coming from and what they have to offer, and being genuinely curious about that as you're bringing veterans out in the workforce. It's not a token gesture. It is an important relationship that needs to be built. And then secondly, set your marks high. Give people opportunities to excel, to lead, especially in the mental health realm. So Joe, what do you want to make sure that people walk away with?
So I would say one of the most important things that I've learned as a leader is responding with love. Love your subordinates, love your soldiers, and it's amazing like what you can end up with and really kind of allow yourself to meet those expectations.
Always love, beginning, middle, and end, always. If you just start and end there, you will always do the right thing. So thank you, Joe, for that reminder. Thanks for coming on the program. Thanks for all you're doing with the research, the leadership, and your voice. You've said to me a couple of times, you're the only veteran between you and the president leading these kinds of things. And so it's really it's essential that you're here. Stay the course. It's sometimes hard to be the lone voice on this, but you're doing amazing work. Thank you to all the people that are helping us put this together, our huge team, Dave, Mitchell, Chase, everyone. Thanks for your contribution to making this get into as many ears as possible. Thank you to all the listeners who made this a priority for your day. In closing, how can people best get a hold of you, Joe, if they want to learn more?
Sure, they can contact me my email, joseph, josph.geraci, GRACI@va.gov.
Excellent. And we'll put a bunch of resources in the chat for those of you who are curious, along with Joe's email, so that you can take your next action steps. So finally, as we like to say, working minds work well together. There's lots we can learn from each other to improve the well-being of our workplaces. Until we meet again, take care.